Wang is a weak virgin loser who has never had a girlfriend, so he is mocked and ignored by his entire class. But as soon as childhood friend says she has a crush on him, all of his haters show up and beat him up for it. They then throw him off a bridge and leave him to die, but as Wang is drowning, he finds a glowing cube artifact at the bottom of the lake. And after touching it, he is granted unimaginable power, allowing him to take revenge on his bullies and rule the world. But let's take it from the start. Wang is at a high school mixer with all his classmates, and they are all playing Jenga. It's Shen Yao's turn to make a move, but when she locks eyes with Wang, she gets flustered and messes up. As part of the game, anyone who topples the tower is required to reveal a secret, so the group asks Shen Yao to tell them who her crush is. Wang starts smiling as soon as he hears this, so his classmates start teasing him because there's no way Shen Yao could possibly like a plain-looking NPC like him, but to everyone's surprise, including Wang, Shen Yao admits that she really does like him. And she makes it very clear that she's not joking because she has liked him ever since the day they met in middle school. Wang is too stunned because having Shen Yao confess to him is like a dream come true. But right after the mixer ended, he got kidnapped and is currently being beaten to a pulp down by the river. Wang has never met any of these people in his life, but their boss, Sunjin, happens to have a crush on Shen Yao. And after learning that Shen Yao likes Wang rather than just taking the L and moving on, he decided to drag Wang down to the river and have his underlings threaten to kill him. Wang recognizes Sunjin as the leader of a notorious gang, and he also recalls hearing that Sunjin would constantly harass Shen Yao. So he realizes what's going on here, but there's nothing he can do against this many opponents. Sunjin then video calls Shen Yao from Wang's phone and tells her to have a look at the pitiful state of her crush. Shen Yao is horrified to see what Sunjin has done to Wang, so Wang yells for Sunjin to leave her out of this because he doesn't want her to worry about him. But Sunjin is intent on making Shen Yao watch Wang's humiliation. He tells Wang that he is a total loser and that he has no right to date someone as perfect as Shen Yao. He then orders Wang to swear that he will never get involved with Shen Yao again, otherwise, Sunjin says he's going to drop him in the river. Now, Wang could take the easy way out and swear that he won't talk to Shen Yao again, but Wang would never betray her like that, so instead he headbutts the guy holding him. To Wang's credit, that was a really solid headbutt, but unfortunately for him, it was so solid that the guy holding him accidentally let go, so Wang ends up falling into the river. Sunjin starts panicking because he never actually planned to kill Wang. He just wanted to scare him a little so he wouldn't steal Shen Yao from him. He frantically calls out for Wang to see if he's alright, but no one answers, so Wang is probably dead. That means Sunjin has just committed murder, and he let Shen Yao witness the entire thing. Meanwhile, inside the water, Wang is currently drowning, but he doesn't bother trying to save himself because if he can't protect the one that he loves, then there's no point in being alive. As his life flashes before his eyes, Wang has a vision of his childhood. He had just run away from a fight and by middle school standards that instantly destroyed all the popularity he used to have. And to really rub it in, he overhears two girls talking about how much of a crybaby they think he is. Hours went by, and as the school day ended, everyone went home, but Wang stayed behind and continued to sulk. Eventually, Shen Yao walks out of the gate, but she stops as soon as she notices Wang sitting by the gate, so she asks him what's wrong. Wang remains silent, so Shen Yao assumes he must have forgotten his umbrella and offers to share hers with him so they can walk home together. Wang refuses her offer and says he can walk home by himself, but Shen Yao reminds him that it's still raining and he doesn't have an umbrella, so he's going to get soaked. Wang realizes she's right, but he says he can just wait here until the rain stops. Shen Yao thinks Wang is really funny, but then she notices a cut on his arm, so she asks him to let her see it. Wang initially refuses, but Shen Yao says she just wants to help dress the wound. Wang eventually agrees, so Shen Yao puts a bandage on his arm and blows a kiss onto it to make it heal faster. And at that very moment, Wang had already imagined the next 50 years of his life with Shen Yao. He thanks her for her help, and from that moment forward, the two of them were practically inseparable. Back to the present, Wang wakes up in the water and he notices a light coming from the bottom of the river. He has already sunk too far down for him to make it back to the surface before he drowns, so he decides to commit to it and swims down to check out the light before he dies. Once he gets to the bottom, he finds a little glowing cube there, so he picks it up, and before he even realizes what's going on, the cube activates and goes inside him. All of a sudden, Wang feels immense pain throughout his body, and a few moments later he is teleported out of the water and starts traveling through a wormhole that lands him in the middle of a cube. When Wang wakes up, he starts panicking because he was drowning a second ago. He is relieved to be alive, but now he has no idea where he is or how he got here for that matter. Just then, a system appears in front of him and announces that Wang Mao has the power to draw a 15-meter radius around himself, and within that area, he is allowed to teleport to any location instantly. None of that makes any sense to Wang since he doesn't believe teleportation is real. But in the next moment, he gets teleported against his will. He appears into the sky above the canal, and Wang starts freaking out again because he is really high up and he's worried he might fall to his doom. But he's actually floating, so he's safe. Once he calms down, he looks at the ground and realizes that Sun Jin is desperately searching for him in the water because he's worried that he might have killed Wang, and he finds it kind of amusing. But a few seconds later, he gets teleported to a new location. Sun Jin gets the feeling that someone was just watching him from the sky, so he asks his subordinates if they heard anything just now, but they think Sun Jin must have just been hallucinating, so he tells them to keep looking for Wang. Meanwhile, Wang ended up being teleported into an empty classroom in his school, and he is now sure that he really can teleport, but he doesn't understand how he got this power. Suddenly, the system speaks up and tells Wang that he has just continuously activated his teleportation ability. Wang starts freaking out and worries that he might be going crazy since he is hearing voices in his head, but the system corrects him because it is actually in Wang's body, not his head. That's still not very comforting, so Wang tells it to get out of his body, but the system ignores him and warns that someone is approaching. There is a staff member walking towards the classroom because he heard a weird noise coming from inside, but as he opens the door, all he sees is an empty classroom with a puddle of water on the floor. Wang ended up making it back to his house, so he decided to take a shower to relax. Once he's done with his shower, he pulls out his phone and somehow it still works even though it was at the bottom of the river with him. The first thing he does is call Shen Yao to let her know that he's alive, and as soon as Shen Yao answers, she starts frantically asking him if he's alright. He tells her he is fine, but she thinks Sun Jin went way too far, so she asks Wang if they should report him to the police. Honestly, Shen Yao should have called the cops the moment she saw Wang fall off the bridge, but Wang tells her there's no need. He managed to get away without Sun Jin spotting him, so right now, he's probably still searching the river for Wang's body and worrying about all the potential jail time he could get. Anyway, a lot of stuff happened today, so Wang tells her to get some rest for today and hangs up. He then lays down in his bed and wonders what he's going to do about his system, because no one would believe him even if he told them. All of a sudden, the system shows up again and asks if Wang has calmed down yet. Wang asks it why it keeps following him around, but the system reminds him that it is a part of his body now, so Wang can't get away from it. The system then activates the cube and Wang is sucked into it once again. The system explains that it has established a connection with Wang's body, so in other words, Wang is stuck with it forever. That makes him the user of the Horadric Cube Universal System, and by extension, the master of the system. Wang still doesn't fully understand, so he asks the system where he is, so it explains that this is a macro space within the cube, and even though the cube is only 3 cubic centimeters big, it has a lot more space on the inside. Wang knows the system is telling the truth, so he asks it why it bothered helping someone like him, and the system tells him it's because it wants to make his dream come true, and that dream is to become the king of the world. Wang tries practicing his teleportation with the system, but he soon runs out of energy, so he almost falls off the edge of a building. The system tells him that its energy reserves have almost been depleted, so it is going to have to limit the teleportation to once a minute. Wang decides to take a break from teleportation practice for now since it'd be bad that he ran out of energy 1,000 feet in the air. The system tells him that there's a safer way to practice because, in theory, he should be able to use his powers to see everything within 15 meters. Wang decides to give it a try, and with his new power, he is able to see his bedroom, a couple in bed, and one of his neighbors while she's in the bathtub. This feels wrong, so Wang stops using the power on his apartment building and tries scanning the garden instead, but he gets scared when a cat locks eyes with him. Wang ends up falling to his knees, so the system warns him that if he keeps using his teleportation and sensory enhancements, then he will run out of energy. For a beginner, Wang is pretty good at controlling his powers, but his body isn't used to burning so much energy, so he ends up passing out. A few hours later, Wang wakes up in his bed and he realizes he might have overdone it with the training last night, so he will be more careful from now on. The system brought Wang back to his room after he passed out because he needs a lot of rest. Wang suddenly realizes he can no longer hear the system's voice in his head and asks what's going on. The system explains that staying bonded with Wang's body consumes energy, and he can't let Wang die from energy exhaustion because he would disappear too. That makes sense to Wang, but he's still having a hard time believing that he has superpowers now. He tries searching for information about the cube on the internet, but unfortunately, there's no Indian guy with a tutorial for this, so he's going to have to figure it out on his own. Just then, he receives a message from Yao, and she's asking him if he wants to have lunch with her tomorrow. Wang is excited at first, but then he remembers what Sun Jun did to him, and he swears that he will make him regret it. But not right now, because he still runs out of energy way too quickly. He asks the system if there's any way for him to increase his strength, so it tells him that there's an inbuilt automatic upgrade function, so by absorbing an energy gem, Wang can get stronger. Wang gets excited and asks what kind of gems he needs for the upgrade, so the system tells him he can use rocks. Theoretically, any random rock could have energy stored within it, but he would have better luck using rocks like that valuable Chrismatite on the shelf or his mother's priceless diamond ring. Wang can't afford to use such expensive rocks on the system, but the system tells him he doesn't need to worry because those don't have enough energy in the first place. But the system did manage to find a gem outside that should have enough power to give him a decent upgrade. Wang asks where it is and the system tells him it's in the downstairs garden, so Wang wastes no time and teleports downstairs with a shovel in hand. He then asks where he should start digging, but the system encourages him to try to find it on his own with his spatial awareness. It's worth giving it a shot, so Wang closes his eyes and starts scanning the area. Eventually, he locates something over by that tree, so he walks over and digs it up. He finds it hard to believe that this rock really has power inside it, since it looks like a regular bright orange pebble, but the system assures him that it can be used for his upgrade. Wang asks what he should do next, so the system tells him to put the gem in his inner cube. Wang enters the cube space and holds the stone up against the wall, and a few seconds later it is absorbed. He is surprised that actually worked, and he's already starting to feel the power rush into his body. The system explains that the stone's power has raised Wang's strength by 2 and his endurance by 1, and if he keeps absorbing power stones, he can greatly improve his combat ability. The next morning, Wang's alarm goes off, so he gets out of bed, but he's still sleepy because he spent all night hunting for power stones. He suddenly remembers that he has to go to school today, so he hurries to get ready and dashes to his class a few minutes later. As soon as he gets there, Yao starts asking him for an explanation after everything that happened last night, but then she realizes everyone in class is staring at her. And they still remember her admitting that she likes Wang, so they start teasing her over it. Just then, there's a commotion at the front door because Sun Jun just showed up, and the first thing he did after getting here was order one of his subordinates to kick a random dude in the body. Sun Jun clearly broke into the school because he's after Wang, so Yao is worried, but Wang tells her to calm down and go back to her seat for now. Sun Jun heard that Wang was still alive, so he walks to the front of the class and demands to know where he is. As soon as he says Wang's name, everyone in class looks at him because they're all a bunch of snitches. Wang tries to ignore the problem in hopes that Sun Jun will just give up and go away, but he already spotted Wang, so he starts walking up the stairs to get to him. It doesn't look like Wang will be able to get out of this without a fight, but with his new powers, he should be able to handle him in a fight. Just to be sure, he asks the system if he's got a good chance at winning, and the system tells him this will be an easy win because the average combat power of the people here is 5 and Wang's current combat power is 22. All of a sudden, Yao tries talking Sun Jun out of this because she doesn't want Wang to get hurt. But Sun Jun just walks up to her and starts shit-talking Wang. Yao tells Sun Jun to just leave already, but Wang has had enough of this disrespect, so he gets up and apologizes to Yao for letting Sun Jun harass her for so long, but he says he will take care of him now. Sun Jun is offended that Wang thinks he can take care of him, so he grabs him by the collar and threatens to kill him. However, Wang grabs his arm and squeezes it so hard that Sun Jun momentarily re-evaluates his decisions. Wang tells Sun Jun that if he continues harassing him and Yao, then he will have no choice but to make him regret it. Sun Jun is still trying to figure out what steroids Wang took to have so much strength, but all of a sudden, the class teacher arrives and he tells Sun Jun and his men to get out because they aren't part of this class. Sun Jun doesn't want the teacher to call the police, so he agrees to leave, but before he does, he whispers into Wang's ear and tells him to come to the North City basketball court tonight if he doesn't want Yao to get hurt. Sun Jun then leaves and Yao asks Wang to tell her what Sun Jun whispered into his ear, but Wang tells her it wasn't important. Coincidentally, he says his head suddenly started hurting, so he might have to skip class today. Meanwhile, over at the basketball court, Sun Jun still can't wrap his head around how Wang suddenly became strong enough to leave bruises on his wrist, but he chalks it up to a fluke because there's no way he's been hitting the gym that hard, and he swears that he will make Wang pay for humiliating him like that. A little while later, Wang arrives at the basketball court and he demands to know where Sun Jun is. He finds Sun Jun sitting at the top of the bleachers, and Sun Jun laughs because there's no way Wang can escape now. And there's no chance that Wang wins this fight because Sun Jun never planned on having a 1v1, he's gonna jump Wang with his entire gang. The system warns Wang that he might be cooked here because there are 13 opponents here. Wang is still confident in his powers, so he asks the system what his chances of winning are, and to his horror, the system tells him he only has a 20% chance of winning. Wang suddenly doesn't feel so confident anymore, and Sun Jun notices this, so he starts mocking him even more. He gathers all his men and they all stand in front of Wang, but before he begins the beatdown, he says he will give Wang one last chance to apologize and beg for mercy. However, Wang starts insulting Sun Jun and his North City gang for being too scared to fight him one-on-one. He's trying to bait Sun Jun into fighting solo so he has a better chance of winning, and Sun Jun knows this, but he can't let that insult slide, so he's about to swing at Wang. But before he does, one of his men steps out and says he will fight Wang for Sun Jun. Kong is the strongest fighter in Sun Jun's gang, so everyone is sure that Wang stands no chance against him. And even Wang isn't sure he can handle him, so he asks the system to analyze Kang's combat power, but it's only 10, so he shouldn't be too hard to beat. Kong picks up a basketball and gets ready to throw it at Wang, but the system warns him, so he dodges in time. Kong then tries to punch Wang, but he is blocking and weaving like he's a professional fighter. Meanwhile, back in class, Yeo is worried about Wang because he was acting suspicious earlier, and now he won't answer his phone, so she decides to do something about it. Back at the gym, Kang still hasn't managed to land a single hit on Wang yet, and he's starting to wear himself out, so Wang just needs to land the final blow now. Kang charges at Wang again, but Wang is still way too quick for him, so he catches Kang's leg, and from there it's lights out for him because Wang hits him with an electric punch and throws Kang into a wall. The other gang members can't believe that Kang was actually defeated by a nobody like Wang, so they ask Sun Jun what they should do. Sun Jun just laughs and yells that even if Wang was able to defeat Kang, there are still too many of them for him to fight at once, so he will still lose. Wang asks the system if his chances of winning against the gang have gone up at all, and since Kang is still out cold, there's one less person to fight, but Wang's chances of winning are still only 30%, so he may be in real trouble now. He has no choice but to fight them all at once, so Wang gets into position and starts fending off their attacks, but he can't keep up with all of them, so he gets kicked from behind. Wang took that kick personally, so he turns around and erases the guy's entire future generation in one kick. He then throws him in front of Sun Jun, and Sun Jun is starting to get worried, so he tells everyone to surround Wang immediately. Wang can't let himself get cornered, so he flips onto the bleachers and starts running to create some distance between them. He then jumps down and leg sweeps one guy, but in the process, he gets grabbed from behind. He tries to get the guy off of him, but before he knows it, he gets kicked in the gut and knocked to the ground. That kick really hurt, but Wang isn't going to let them catch him off guard again, so he stands ready to face them all at once. At first, he is overwhelmed by their constant attacks, but this time, he can sense the sneak attack coming, so he dodges it and catches the leg of the guy who gut-kicked him. He then swings the guy around and throws him straight into Sun Jun's face, and Sun Jun is finally starting to realize just how terrifying Wang's strength is. Wang then starts walking over to Sun Jun, but the system warns him that he needs to take a break because he has almost exhausted all his energy. In his current state, there's no way he could beat Sun Jun in a fight, but even if it's just a bluff, Wang still wants to scare Sun Jun enough so he never causes trouble for Yao again. Just then, the boss of the South City gang shows up, and he's here to make fun of Sun Jun and the North City gang for losing a fight against a single dude. He tells Sun Jun that if he can't beat up one guy, then he has no right to call himself the boss of the North City gang, so he should just give up already, but Wang interrupts him mid-sentence. He can tell that there is clearly some pre-existing beef between the North and South City gangs, but that's got nothing to do with him, so he doesn't want to get involved. However, even though Huan has never met Wang before and has no idea why he was fighting Sun Jun, he decides to send his subordinates to beat him up just to prove a point. The system warns Wang that he stands no chance of beating them in a head-on fight with his current energy levels, so Wang has to run for his life. Wang asks the system to teleport him. Since he is low on energy, he has to wait for the cooldown, so he keeps running until he makes it to the side of the stair. The cooldown is over, so he can finally teleport again, and the first thing he does is turn off all the lights. While everyone is fumbling around in the dark, Wang teleports behind them, and after staring Huan straight in the face, Wang slams him into the ground. He then proceeds to beat up every single member of Huan's gang, so by the time the lights are turned back on, Wang is the only one left standing, so Sun Jun is even more terrified of him now. All of a sudden, they hear a man yelling from outside the gym, and it looks like Yao called the cops because she was worried about Wang. The police are currently trying to get through the locked doors, and Yao asks them to please hurry because her friend might be in danger in there. Wang won't be able to get out of the building without being spotted, and he doesn't want to get in trouble for fighting, so he needs to come up with something quickly. He looks over at Sun Jun and teleports in front of him, so Sun Jun gets on his knees and starts begging for forgiveness. This gives Wang a good idea, so he says he will forgive Sun Jun, but only on one condition. As the police finally get the door open, they see Sun Jun holding Wang by the collar and pretending to punch him. Sun Jun and Huan end up getting in trouble for starting a group fight in the gym, but Wang got away scot-free because he convinced the cops that he was an innocent bystander who got caught up in the crossfire. He also made Sun Jun promise to never bother Yao again, so that problem is solved. But that fight made Wang understand that there are limits to his power, so he needs to get stronger as soon as possible. And to do that, he needs to find more power gems. He goes looking in a jewelry store, but he soon realizes that he's too broke to afford any of these, and he doesn't want to steal them either. He briefly considers getting a sugar mama so he can afford to buy the gems, but that's not worth it. So Wang decides to go out and look for power gems in the wild. He gets a bunch of gear and heads into the nearest mountain range so he can start looking for some gems. And he does find some, but one is under a giant rock. One is at the bottom of the lake, and another one is stuck 15 meters underground, so there's no way Wang could get to it on his own. Just then, the system alerts Wang because it has just located a cave underground and adds a lot of power stone energy in it. Wang is curious, so he tries teleporting into the cave. But for some reason, even though it is within range, he can't get in. The system explains that if an area is completely sealed off, then Wang can't teleport inside. To teleport into the cave, he would need at least a 1 centimeter gap to get in, but Wang doesn't have the strength to dig all the way down there. He thinks about it for a second, and if all he needs is to be close to a gap in the cave, he should probably be able to find one near the lake. The water is bound to have eroded the ground, so after scanning, he finds a tiny gap that leads into the cave. Once he is teleported into the cave, he falls over because he wasn't expecting the floor here to be so slippery. He takes out his flashlight and starts looking around the cave to see if he can find anything, but all he sees is a random frog. All of a sudden, the system informs Wang that it has detected power stones directly in front of him, but there's nothing but a wall here, so Wang gets incredibly frustrated. After all the trouble he went through to get down here, he still can't get to the power stones, but then he feels a gust of wind on his face. He realizes that if there's wind, there must be a hole somewhere. As soon as he finds the gap, Wang teleports inside. After teleporting through the gap, Wang finds himself in an entirely new section of the cave. He takes a few steps forward, but he wasn't paying attention, so he nearly falls off the edge of a cliff. Luckily, he managed to save himself, but his flashlight is gone now. He decides to take a break and try to spot the gems before he does anything else. But it turns out that Wang isn't alone in here. He manages to locate the gems in a cluster on the other side of the cave, but while he's trying to figure out how to get there since they are out of his teleportation range, a giant snake sneaks up behind him. But just as the snake is about to eat him, Wang decides to just teleport from rock to rock until he makes it to the gems, so he teleports away before the snake could bite down on him. He still hasn't realized that there's a snake in this tunnel, so he decides to walk the rest of the way while he waits for his teleportation cooldown to end. He eventually gets close enough that the system can identify 12 different power stones here, so Wang is really excited, but it's going to be difficult to get to them because the platforms near the power stones are very narrow. He is still completely unaware that the snake is trying to eat him, and he doesn't want to risk falling to his death, so he is hesitant to teleport there. But there's no other way, so just before the snake bites him, Wang teleports down and clings onto a rock for dear life. Now that he's close enough to the power stones, Wang ties a rope to himself for safety and begins mining them, and after getting his first one, he is unbelievably happy. But when he tries to get the second one, his hand slips, and he accidentally drops it all the way down to the bottom of the cave. He can't afford to lose that gem, so he tries using his spatial awareness to locate it, but to his horror, he senses something huge right next to him. As the snake tries to bite him, Wang slips and falls off the edge of the pillar, so the snake dives after him. Luckily, the rope around Wang's waist stops him from falling, so the snake misses him and falls into the water. However, moments later, the rope snaps and Wang ends up falling into the water as well. Now he's in danger of drowning, but the snake is still trying to eat him, so Wang grabs his shovel and tries to smack the snake away. But the shovel does absolutely nothing, so Wang gets captured by the snake, and it begins squeezing the life out of him. Wang asks the system to teleport him into the Q dimension, but the system tells him he can't do that while the snake is holding onto him. So as a last-ditch effort, Wang stabs the shovel into the snake to make it release him. The snake does release him, but Wang is already passed out from a lack of air, so the system automatically teleports him into the Q dimension. And once Wang regains consciousness, he tells the system that he's going to merge with all the gems he just collected. That's certainly an option, but the system informs Wang that there's a better way to do this. He currently has 11 elementary power gems, but they can be synthesized into an advanced power gem, and an advanced power gem will grant him much more power. Wang obviously wants an advanced power gem, but the system tells him it will take 4 days to synthesize the gems into an advanced one. But they don't have that kind of time, so the system tells Wang he can synthesize 9 of the gems and then use 2 of them right now so he can fight the snake. Once he has finished absorbing the 2 elementary gems, Wang teleports back out for the cube and the snake immediately attacks him again. However, this time, Wang easily blocks its attack and kills the snake instantly. Wang is honestly disappointed that the fight was so easy, since he was expecting more of a challenge, but he is grateful for the easy win regardless. He walks into the water to take a look at the snake's corpse, but to his surprise, he finds another power gem in there, and this one looks really pretty, so Wang has a good idea about what to do with it. Meanwhile, Sun Jun and Huan meet in a club, and Huan seems hell-bent on getting revenge against Wang. Huan wants to get even with Wang, but Sun Jun doesn't think it's worth it because there's no way they can beat him. Even with the combined force of both of their gangs, Wang would still wipe the floor with them, but Huan has a plan. He tells Sun Jun that Luo is back in town, and as soon as Sun Jun hears that name, he becomes terrified. He yells at Huan because it would be a death sentence to even consider asking Luo for help with this, but Huan isn't stupid enough to do that. However, he is stupid enough to think he can manipulate Luo into getting rid of Wang for them. He reminds Sun Jun that the reason Luo left town 2 years ago was because he got into a fight with someone stronger than him, a man called Shiku Tsin. Sun Jun doesn't know much about Shiku, but he does remember Shiku having something to do with Shen Yao. Shen Yao was studying in the library when all of a sudden her phone rang. As soon as she answered it, the guy on the other end warned her that someone was coming for her. All of a sudden, Shen Yao is surrounded by 4 men in suits, and these guys don't seem like they are here to give her candy, so Shen Yao gets up and runs straight for the door, but there's an agent blocking her path, so she is forced to run down the corridor instead. She eventually finds a closet, so she opens the door and locks herself inside to escape the agents, but now she's got nowhere to go. The agents start trying to break down the door, and Shen Yao is terrified. But just when things look hopeless, the man who called to warn her tells her to turn around. Behind her, there's a blob of yellow energy floating, and from it, a hand reaches out to grab her, so Shen Yao closes her eyes and waits for the inevitable. By the time the agents have broken the door down, Shen Yao is long gone. She was taken by Shiku, and he's the guy who called to warn her about the agents, so he's currently trying to get her as far away from them as possible, so he's hitting every Parker move in the book. However, the agents have a secret weapon to counter Shiku's Parker, a gun. Shiku gets shot out of the air and he's mostly unharmed, but he won't be able to get away from the agents like this, so he puts Shen Yao down and sets up a barrier to protect her while he prepares for a fight. He jumps off the ledge, and as soon as he lands, he hits one of the agents with a punch that definitely made him start smelling sound. Another agent runs up to attack him, so Shiku punches him away while also fending off 2 other agents. Eventually, one of them manages to tackle Shiku, and now that he's got him, he drags Shiku into the air. After a brief scuffle mid-air, the man manages to slam Shiku into a building with the help of his 3 allies, but when the dust settles, all 3 allies have been knocked out. Shiku, on the other hand, is perfectly fine, but I'm sure at least 10 innocent people just died in that building. Shiku still has an agent confronting him, so he floats back out of the building and takes off his coat because things are about to get serious. The agent is tired of wasting time, so he decides to go all out and picks up a second building to use as a projectile. The people in that building are probably wishing they called in sick for work right about now, but there's nothing they can do as the agent throws the building at Shiku. But without even breaking a sweat, Shiku catches the building with his powers, breaks it apart, and throws the blocks back at the agent. The agent tries to defend himself, but Shiku simply compressed all the blocks until a massive explosion occurs that sends Shiku and the agent to a mirrored version of the world. Shiku is annoyed that things turned out like this because it's going to cause a lot of trouble for him, and he still has to deal with the agent first. The agent pulls out his gun and aims it at Shiku, and I'm not sure what he thinks a gun is going to do when Shiku just caught a building a minute ago, but none of it matters because the gun doesn't work in this dimension and Shiku is out of time anyway. The yellow energy begins to surround Shiku, and as it does, it knocks the agent backward into the water. Time then begins to rewind, and Shiku hopes that things can turn out differently in the next loop. Eventually, everything goes back to normal, and Shen Yao wakes up back at her desk in the library. She has no recollection of what just happened, and she finds a young Wang standing next to her and asking for help because he doesn't understand his math homework. Back in the present, Huan continues talking about his plan. Luo has some major beef with Shiku, so if they play their cards right, then they might be able to force Wang into a fight with Luo by using Yao as bait. The next day, Wang is supposed to meet Yao for a date, but she's late, and when he tries to call her phone, she doesn't answer. He thinks it's strange since Yao never ignores his calls, but she might just be busy, so he decides to wait a little longer for her to arrive. However, he eventually overhears someone talking about an incident that happened at the apartment complex where Yao stays, and Wang has a bad feeling about this, so he takes off running to go check on Yao. But to his dismay, when he arrives, he finds the place swarmed with police cars, and Yao's mother is crying because Yao was kidnapped. The police say they are going to investigate to find Yao, But Wang isn't going to wait around for that, so he needs to find out who is behind this. Just then, Wang notices Sun Jun walking through the crowd nearby, and he knows he must have something to do with this, so a little while later, Wang corners him in a dark alley and demands an explanation. At first, Sun Jun tries to play dumb and acts like he doesn't know anything, but then Wang punches a hole through the wall and warns Sun Jun that the same thing is going to happen to his head if he doesn't start talking soon. Sun Jun immediately begins snitching and tells Wang all about the plan that Huan came up with. Meanwhile, Huan is regretting the existence of the dumbass brain cells that made him think this was a good plan. Luo already figured out that Huan was trying to use him, and he hates being manipulated, but he also hates Shiku, so if Huan's plan will lure out Shiku, then he's going to play along. But that doesn't mean he has forgiven Huan, so Luo is currently playing golf with Huan's mouth. Shen Yao is currently tied up in the corner of the room, and she is terrified after seeing what Luo just did to Huan, so she tries to avoid eye contact. But then he walks straight up to her. He says he's going to ask her a few questions, and she had better not lie to him because he's not above rearranging her face like he did with Huan. He asks her what her relationship is with Shiku, but Yao has honestly never heard of the guy before. Luo doesn't believe her because they have records of Shiku risking his life against extraordinary men just to save her, so there's no way she doesn't know who he is. It is possible that Shiku saved her without revealing his true identity to her, so she really doesn't know who he is. But Shiku certainly knows who Yao is, and he seems to care about her a lot, so it is strange and he hasn't shown up to save her yet even though she was kidnapped. And even if Shiku does show up, the butler isn't sure that Luo will be able to win against him with his current forces. Luo thinks that's absurd because he spent a ton of money hiring a bunch of professional fighters for his revenge, but even so, they don't know how strong Shiku truly is, so the butler isn't sure they would win against him. And it may not be a wise decision to kill or even hurt Yao until they have a plan to deal with Shiku. Luo understands what he's saying, so he calms down and agrees to leave Yao alone for now and leaves the room. Meanwhile, Sun Jun has just finished explaining how Huan convinced Luo to kidnap Yao because of her connection to Shiku's sin. Wang doesn't understand any of it though, so he asks Sun Jun who this Shiku guy is and why Luo believes he can use Yao to lure him out. Sun Jun reminds Wang of the incident that happened to Shen Yao several years ago when she was nearly kidnapped. The public story is that a random Good Samaritan saved her, but in reality that man was Shiku. Since that day, many people have tried to find him, but none succeeded because Shiku never leaves traces of his presence behind. Except one time when he showed up and broke 2 of Luo's fingers. Ever since that day, Luo has been hell-bent on finding Shiku so he can get his revenge. Huan decided to use this to his advantage and gave Luo some information so he would kidnap Yao, but to be clear, Sun Jun was against the plan from the start, so he had nothing to do with it. Wang has heard enough, so he is ready to go save Yao. And since Sun Jun wasn't involved, Wang is going to let him go. Wang eventually arrives at the construction site where Yao is being held, but as he approaches, the system warns him that there are 7 powerful martial artists in there. Wang realizes this could be troublesome, so he asks the system if it is done processing that advanced gem yet, but it will still take another 30 minutes to synthesize. Now, Wang could wait until he gets his power boost, but he doesn't know if Yao is safe, so he can't afford to waste any time. As he is walking towards the building, Luo and his team spots him, and even though Wang isn't Shiku, Luo thinks it'll be fun to torment him, so he orders his martial artists to deal with him. But they can only fight him one at a time because jumping him all at once wouldn't be fun to watch. Wang walks up to the front gate and he is about to break the lock to get in, but he is stopped by a martial artist, Pablo. He warns Wang that the lock is reinforced with a supernatural barrier, so if he tries to break through it with brute force, he will suffer severe backlash and die. In that case, Wang tells him to hand over the key for the lock, but Pablo can't do that. He has orders to kill anyone who tries to go upstairs, so he is giving Wang a chance to back away and go home. However, Wang has no intention of abandoning Yao, and if Pablo is going to try to get in his way, then Wang is going to have to beat him up. According to the system, Pablo has a power level of 52 and Wang's power level is still only 50, so he is at a huge disadvantage here. Pablo throws the first punch and it looks like it would have been fatal, but Wang managed to dodge in time and lands a kick across his face. However, it did absolutely no damage to him. Pablo is stronger and more durable than Wang, so even if Wang is a little bit faster than him, he won't be able to land any decisive blows with his fists. But then Wang realizes this is a street fight, so as the man charges at him again, he teleports a nearby hammer into his hand and caves in his skull with it. While Pablo is taking a potentially permanent nap, Wang takes the key and proceeds to the next floor. As he is running up the stairs, a system warns Wang that the next fighter has a power level of 75, but Wang doesn't hesitate and rushes into the room. As soon as he enters, he realizes all the lights are off, so the room is pitch black. The martial artist on this floor, Lee, is an assassin who has mastered the technique of erasing his presence in dark places. All his stat points were dumped into stealth, so he could easily sneak up on Wang and kill him before he realizes what's going on. Or at least, that would be the case if Wang didn't have spatial awareness. Wang knows exactly where Lee is, so as he is trying to attack Wang from behind, Wang pulls a bat out of his inventory and whacks Lee right in the nuts. Two martial artists on the upper floor have been watching Wang make his way up the floors, and they are surprised that he managed to beat them so easily. But his next opponent is going to be Beowulf, and the man doesn't think Wang stands a chance. He predicts that it will only take a few seconds for Beowulf to crush him, but if by some miracle Wang manages to defeat him, then he will have to face them, and the girl is particularly excited. Wang eventually makes it up to the next floor, and Beowulf is standing there waiting for him with his back turned. He's about to give a speech about how impressive it is that Wang made it this far, but Wang skips the cutscenes and tries to whack him with a bat immediately. However, Beowulf catches it and slams Wang to the ground. That single slam knocked all the wind out of Wang's system, so he knows he stands no chance against Beowulf as he is now. But fortunately, the system informs him that the advanced gem is almost fully processed, so he just needs to survive for a minute so he can get his stat boost. Yeah, that's going to be a lot harder than he thought because Beowulf is currently hitting combos on Wang, and there's nothing he can do about it. Wang attempts to kick Beowulf, but getting close to him was a mistake because Beowulf catches Wang's leg, breaks his arm, and then punches him straight through a pillar. Wang would be dead right now, but a minute has passed, so the system begins integrating the advanced gem's power. This heals Wang's body and boosts all his stats, so he is ready to resume the fight, but this time the scales are tipped in his favor. Since Wang is back on his feet, Beowulf gets ready for another round of battle, but with a single punch, Wang sends him flying across the room. That punch has Beowulf questioning everything he has worked for, because he can't believe a sea-level warrior like him would lose to a random kid. But that random kid proceeds to hit him with a black flash and knock him through the wall. Luo has been watching the whole thing on the cameras, and he is furious that the highly trained martial artists that he paid for are losing to a kid he's never even heard of. Maybe it would have been better to have them jump Wang after all, but the butler assures him that the next two martial artists will definitely defeat him. They are from the Million Martial Arts Alliance, and it is safe to say that they are true professionals. Million Stone is a force to be reckoned with. The girl is even more terrifying than he is. Since she got here, she's been wearing a restriction bracelet to limit her powers, and if she were to remove it, there's no telling the amount of destruction that she could cause. Wang is now climbing the staircase to get to the next floor, but the system warns him that his heart rate is skyrocketing and he is experiencing severe psychological stress. Wang is well aware of this, and he is stressed because he can sense the terrifying aura coming from the people on the next floor. But no matter what, he needs to keep going so he can save Yao. This was the end of episode 5. Subscribe to not miss the next part.